This is CLEARCUT. Welcome back. White South African farmers are waiting to see how and when a constitutional change that allows for confiscating their land will be enacted. Earlier this year, South African Parliament voted to allow for the confiscation of white-owned land without compensation. And as they await their fate, they are also struggling with mounting violence against them. Following dozens of murders and hundreds of attacks, they've now been forced to prepare themselves to fight back, and some are enlisting the help of former Israeli Special Forces agents. Correspondent Paul Tilsley has the story.
A South African farmer, a target for robberies that frequently end in murder, an average of one farmer killed a week for the past 22 years. 3 murdered in just this past weekend. The government doing little to help. The police progressively weaker and unable or unwilling to assist. Criminals preying on farmers like this one as easy, isolated targets. 6 of this man's family and friends have been killed in farm attacks. For his own safety, he doesn't want us to give his name or where we found him.
My family's been attacked. My father-in-law was killed in the farm, in the house where we're living now. There's lots of incidents here. 2 of my wife's close family. In total, I've lost about six people that I know. Good personal friends and family. Yes, it's hectic. It's not nice.
But there's a new man in town, and he's turning the tables on the bad guys. Idan Abelnik is an Israeli ex-Special Forces commando. At a secret, specially adapted location, an hour's drive from Johannesburg, he's brought considerable anti-terrorist skills, honed in Middle East conflicts, here to Africa. He's teaching farmers not just how to fight back, but how to turn the tables on their attackers.
I think because, I've been Lebanon, I've been Hebron, Gaza, I've been conflict area in my life. I've done operation, many operations, and I'm familiar with that, what they're facing here. I realize they're not dealing with, with crime syndicate. They are dealing with the act. The act is a one-on-one terror act.
Here, deep in Africa, more than 9,000 kilometers from Jerusalem, an Israeli ex-Special Forces commando involved in a new fight to save the African farmer.
I want to transfer the mindset to survivor. They need to understand that we are here learning how to survive.
Those being trained by Abelnik really value what he's doing for them.
Well, firstly, I feel honored that he came all the way to South Africa to come and teach us his way and the experience he has.
He's got passion for all people. I can see it in him. I've known him for quite a while now, and you can see it in him. Whatever he does for people. He likes to help people. He likes to equip people to help themselves.
Where I come from, in Israel, is a country we very much believe in peace. We really want a peace, but we will protect and we fight what is right. And same is here in the farm community.
Idan Abelnik, an Israeli trying to save lives in Africa.
And correspondent Paul Tilsley joins us now live from Johannesburg, South Africa. Paul, thanks for being with us. A really remarkable story and terrifying for those farmers. But just to be clear, these former Israeli Defense Force trainers, they're acting completely independent of the Israeli government. Is that correct?
Absolutely, Michelle. This is a paid-for thing. He doesn't seem to charge Idan very much for his services, but it is a commercial venture. It's nothing to do with the Israeli government.
Paul, white South African farmers are fighting these violent attacks as they face land expropriation with no compensation. Earlier this year, the South African Parliament voted to change the constitution and allow for the confiscation of white-owned land without compensation. So where does that stand now?
Well, Michelle, it's still some way from becoming law. The first of more than 30 public hearings kicked off earlier today, and there have been some 700,000 written submissions. It could have a rocky time going into law, though, because although any such law is designed to principally target farmland, private homeowners here have been told by some politicians that they are at risk. Such talk is scaring both white and black people here. But with an election next year, the government is trying to push the law through to win the vote of those without homes. Michelle?
Paul, let's talk about this violence, because just last year, 47 white farmers were murdered, hundreds of attacks. So what are the authorities saying and doing about this?
Well, very little, Michelle. The government is failing in any kind of frankly weak fight it's making against murder and crime generally here. 47 white farmers may have been murdered here in the whole of last year, Michelle, but nationally, 49 people of all colours were killed every day. But it can be terrifying on a farm. One farmer told me that during one attack recently, the police arrived in the middle of a firefight and were too scared to get out of their car. Michelle?
Yeah, the violent crime in South Africa, really terrible. Paul, this motion to change the constitution to allow for the land confiscation, that was brought by Julius Malema. He's the leader of the EFF opposition party. And Malema has been accused of advocating violence, stirring racial tensions. He's even called outright for the slaughter of white people at rallies. He's chanted what translates to "one bullet, one settler." And he's called on supporters to shoot the Boer, that is a term for white South Africans. How is Malema's role in inciting this violence being addressed, if at all, Paul?
Well, he gets to spend a large portion of his time in one court after another on a daily basis almost, accused of hate speech, of racism. But he's very crafty, Michelle, always trying to appeal to the poorest of the poor, the voters. This week, spewing out unrepeatable slurs on South Africa's sizable Indian community, and even using the N-word favoured by rappers to lash out at some black journalists here. So he's lashing out, he's hitting out at anyone who he perceives to have money in order to get votes.
And yet he does enjoy quite substantial support. Paul, because of this violence, Australia was considering fast-tracking visas for those white South African farmers to be granted asylum on humanitarian grounds. That received tremendous backlash from the South African government. Where does that stand now?
Well, Michelle, officially Australia says it will allow applications for visas. Reportedly, they've got 213 requests on humanitarian grounds from here so far, but that they won't give farmers special preference by fast-tracking them. Recently, though, one of the branches of the country's Liberal Party, one of the two main parties, called for the idea of fast-tracking to be put back on the table. But it's just a plan for now, Michelle.
Paul, this has happened previously in the African continent. In neighboring Zimbabwe, then President Mugabe forcibly removed white farmers. That had a devastating impact on the country's economy, formerly known as the breadbasket of Africa, completely destroyed. Is there any concern in the South African government about the economic impact that this could have, removing the white farmers from the land?
Yeah, great question, Michelle. Yes, there's very great concern here. Those in support of taking away land from predominantly white farmers are often told to look north to Zimbabwe to see how it didn't work out at all there. In fact, now Zimbabwe is trying to lure back many of those farmers it chased away to places like Zambia and Mozambique. As one critic put it here, as South Africa goes down the tube, Zimbabwe is lifting itself up again. Michelle?
Interesting. Appreciate that so much, Paul Tilsley, live in Johannesburg, South Africa. Thank you. All right, still ahead on the show, an emotionally charged day in the Holy Land. Prince William kicks off his historic trip with a memorable visit to Israel's Holocaust Museum.